I found myself in December of 2022 in this monastery nestled in the mountains, and I was getting a tour of the monastery. I knew the people who ran it, and they had a special guest there that day. They had a very famous podcaster. If I were to mention his name, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And they were so excited to introduce me to him. So they bring me over to this podcaster, world famous platform, and he starts to ask me about the show. And I remember so clearly, like it was yesterday. I start to try to explain what the podcast is about. And I'm fumbling over things of like, oh, we break down and dissect cultural events and current events and geopolitics. And we try to view it and understand worldview through the things that are happening around us. And how do we discern the world? How do we pursue truth? And as I'm doing this, it's like I get hit with vertigo. The world is spinning. I feel like I'm shrinking. He's growing monstrous and giant in my eyes. And like, I'm just like, everything's kind of spinning right now. And he begins to, really kindly try to give me some advice. He's like, well, Lucas, what you really need to do is try to find something that's current in the news, something current in the headlines, and really make a catchy title to draw people in. And it has to be timely. It has to be timely and urgent. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing that. I'm doing that. He's like, great. The next thing that you need to do is, have like listicles, and have like the top 5 things and create lists and structure in your show. And like, man, I'm doing that too. He's like, okay, well, and he starts to give me like more tactical, just like tactical stuff. It's really good. It's not bad, just tactical. And I interrupt him and I'm like, man, I am doing all of these things. And it just doesn't feel like the podcast is getting anywhere and going anywhere. He pauses for a minute and he looks at me. He says, you know what? Come and join the monastery for the night watch hours. The hours where in the monastery, the monks would pray from midnight to 6 a.m. So he's like, apply to the monastery. And if you do that, I'll look at your podcast and I will give you some feedback. And it was there that I awoke from my dream. Hey, it's Lucas Grobot, and you are listening to Weaver and Loom. Well, welcome back to the podcast. I guess, before it was Lucas Grobot Show. Before that, it was Weaver and Loom. Before that, it was Own the Future. And I guess we're circling all the way back again to Weaver and Loom. So it seems it has been a long 2.5 years. I did the math today, and it's been 2.5, almost 2 years and 6 months and 17, 18 days, depending on when this gets released. And that's a long time. At the podcast here, we did well over 300 episodes. We started mid 2018 and we're at all the way through December of 2022, over 300 shows, normally doing about 2 shows a week. And it was an incredible journey. However, towards the end, I became restless. I really started loathing the work. The pre-production work, I loathed. The post-production work, it was such a drag. The only thing I really loved was the moment of presenting. And some problems really began to come up with the show. It was just part of the noise. There's signal and then there's noise. And I felt like I was just adding more and more anxious noise to the conversation. And I hated that. I hated that it felt like it had become something that was no longer me. Not no longer me, but no longer adding value, no longer moving the conversation forward. Another thing that happened was I felt like I had zero feedback. There was really no sort of feedback loop from listeners or comments on social media. And I'm putting hours in every week. Now, that's not the only reason that I would want to keep going is if I had, an attaboy on my back with comments at each podcast, but it really began to feel episode after episode like I'm putting this out into the void. I'm not feeling like I'm growing through this anymore, and I'm not knowing if it's reaching the people that I want to reach or anyone. I think, um, yeah, that sense of dissatisfaction continued to grow, and I knew that something needed a shift, and it was a long time coming. But when I had this dream in December of 2022, right about the time that the last episode was aired, when I woke up from the dream, I pretty quickly realized what it meant. It meant that I was trying to conform myself into what I thought a popular and successful podcast was and podcaster was. I was looking at the ways that everyone else was doing things, and I desperately was trying to do all the right hacks, all the right moves, all the right plays so that I could become successful. And in that, I was compromising who I was. In that, I was compromising the way that I wanted to show up in the world. And the answer was to retreat into silence. The answer was to retreat into the shadows. The answer was to retreat into darkness. So that launched me into 2.5 years. 2.5 years of no podcast, no posts on social media. I stopped reading the news. I really stopped following the noise. I just began to detox and began to reflect on what is it that caused me to start this? What is it that caused me to persevere for 300 episodes? And what is it that is still nagging inside me that still needs to be said? Now, throughout the couple years, I'd have a person here or there, inquire and ask, and when are you going to start again? And I never really have had an answer, but I've known that the day that I do start again, that it needs to be different, that I need to have a different focus and present in a different way. At this point in life, in 2022, I was beginning to build a bakery, and where we had a full scale, 3 location, 10 employee bakery, 100% sourdough bread. We had this incredible stone mill from Europe, and we're milling our own rye flour and making these incredible breads every day. And it was quite demanding on my schedule, oftentimes working 7 days a week and long hours, starting early in the morning, 3, 4 in the morning, some seasons, even 2 in the morning, to bake this incredible bread. And so it was demanding work, but it was fulfilling work. I began to feel a sense of fulfillment in the manual labor, in the work, the hidden work of the dark hours of the night. And I would keep coming back to the podcast episode 282, I believe, with Dr. Richard Smith. And we were talking about the corporeal world and the physical world. And we were talking about how we had, in this episode, how we had traded and given up the corporeal world. Not what the corporeal is, it's the world of hugs, the world of emotions. It's the world of bricklaying, the world of building houses and baking pies and riding your bike through muddy puddles with your kids. And we had traded it for the digital world, the mediated world of ones and zeros and screens and noise and media and physics and biochemistry and breaking everything down into the smallest parts. And as we have done that, as we have lost the spiritual essence of who we are as humans, and we move more and more into the physical realm where we say there is no spiritual realm, we find that once we break something down into its smallest parts and we try to put it back together, that something is missing, that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I began to feel that on a daily basis. I began to feel the call back to the mysterious, back to the place of wonder, back to the enchantment of the spirit realm, back to the deep things that calls and stirs in each and every one of our souls. And as I baked day in and day out and worked with my hands and lifted hundreds of kgs of flour and baked thousands of loaves of bread, I found something come alive, that there's something in the manual labor that I had missed in all of the mind work and all of the physical, intellectual work that I had been doing for so many years. And so then as have come out of that season, sadly, the bakery didn't survive. It didn't survive. It is lying in the grave. Hopefully one day it will be resurrected and in glory. But the bakery recently had to close about 6 or 7 months ago in late 2024, December 2024. We had to close our bakery. Quite a sad day. But as I have then had the chance to reflect on the podcast and the chance to reflect on 2.5 years of building this incredible business that sadly failed, and thinking, searching deep in my soul, I've been consistently brought back to the time where we switched the podcast from being called Own the Future, where we talked with entrepreneurs, where we talked with artists, where we're interviewing people. And I remember at that time, again, I had this angst of like, something needs to change. And I had a dream at that point, and in the dream, I was helping connect people back to their purpose. And it was a story. I remember in the dream, it was the Weaver and the Loom. And it was something that I was already familiar with. But the Weaver and the Loom, it comes from a passage in Isaiah 38, where Isaiah has come to Hezekiah. Hezekiah is sick, and he's begging that his life be extended, and God grants him this promise to extend his life. And then Hezekiah, the king of Judah at this time, he sings a song. The song goes like this. I said, in the middle of my days, I must depart. I am consigned to the gates of Sheol for the rest of my years. I said, I shall not see the Lord in the land of the living. I shall look on man no more among the inhabitants of the world. My dwelling is plucked up and removed from me like a shepherd's tent. Like a weaver, I have rolled up my life. He cuts me off from the loom. From day to night, you bring me to an end. I calmed myself until morning. Like a lion, he breaks all my bones. From day to night, you bring me to an end. Like a swallow or a crane, I chirp, I moan like a dove. My eyes are weary with looking upward. O Lord, I am oppressed. Be my pledge of safety. What shall I say? For he has spoken to me, and he himself has done it. I will walk slowly all my years because of the bitterness of my soul. But, O Lord, by these things men live, and in all these things is the life of my spirit. O restore me to health and make me live. Behold, it was my welfare. It was for my welfare that I had great bitterness. But in love you have delivered my life from the pit of destruction. For you have cast all my sins behind me. For Sheol does not thank you, death does not praise you, and those who go down to the pit do not hope for your faithfulness. The living, he thanks you, as do I this day. The Father makes known to the children your faithfulness. The Lord will save me, and we will play music on stringed instruments all the days of our life at the house of the Lord. Now Hezekiah is reflecting in this song on how he was brought down low in bitterness and sorrow and sickness. And he says in verse 17, behold, it was for my welfare that I had great bitterness, but in love you have delivered my life from the pit of destruction. And earlier we see the part where the weaver and the loom comes in, that he says, like a weaver, I have been rolled up. He cuts me off from the loom. Now, traditionally, historically, throughout myth and story for thousands of years, the weaver and the loom, it represents destiny, it represents fate, it represents the length of our life that our lives are like a thread being woven in a tapestry on a loom with a weaver. And the weaver is the one that draws our thread. The weaver is the one that ties it into the loom of history, decides where it should go and how it should look. And then it is at the weaver's discretion that we are cut off. And this is the picture, the mythological picture for thousands of years throughout the Greeks and the Romans, and story after story of the three women spinning fate. But we see that Hezekiah is attached back to the loom. He is cut off in death, and then he is resurrected, being brought back and attached back to the loom. And that was really always the heart of Weaver and Loom, was to take us, people, myself included, we're in those areas of our hearts and lives and souls where we feel cut off from nature, cut off from the divine, cut off from Christ, cut off from God. And we are searching desperately to find life again, to find meaning and purpose and truth and who we are, to understand who we are. And to be reattached finally to the loom, reattached to destiny, reattached to purpose, reattached to life and God. And that's where I think I want to go. That's where I want to go with this show. And to be quite transparent and open, it is, in my mind, it is the cross. It is Christ crucified. That is the doorway. It is through his flesh and the death and resurrection that we are able to enter in and be reattached to the eternal promises, to be reattached into the great cosmos of time, that it's through our own self-sacrifice and identification with the cross that we are able to go that way. And the cross is something that is obviously politicized, obviously often overly religious. However, it is something that is truly wild. It is truly something that echoes through our souls throughout eternity. It is a call that is undeniable. We might reject it, but it's undeniably there in each and every one of our lives. The call of self-sacrifice, the call of losing our life to find our life. So what will this show become? Well, that's a great question. I'm not quite sure, but I think where we're going, it's a journey that I want to explore, and it's a journey of exploring myth and story. It's a journey of unfolding the ancient, mythic, mysterious realm, and then tying it back into the mundane grind of our everyday lives. And that's what I found in the grind of a bakery, of waking up at 2 a.m. day after day, shaping hundreds of loaves, often by myself, the mundane of life. But in it, there are mysteries that ought to be and need to be unlocked, because our life is made up of the mundane. Our life is made up of small moments that repeat over and over and over, but there's something divine in them. And we are not meant to merely live and exist in the sublime. We are not just meant to live in the ethos of the spirit and mythos of, the cosmos and ages past. But we are supposed to encounter that and come back into our everyday life. And it's a moving back and forth and finding that space in between where we recognize that We are we are beings that were designed and meant for eternity, and yet right now we are living short temporal lives. And so how do we reconcile those two? How do we go back? How do we go back and hold on to the meaning of life, be reattached to our destiny and our purpose? I don't have the answers for that, but I have stories that over the last 2.5 years have really perturbed me, really disturbed me. And those are the things I want to explore. I want to explore stories and myth and parables and pictures and image and symbolism that disturbs my soul into greater wonderment. And so if that's something that you're interested in, then I welcome you. I welcome you to Weaver and Loom 2.0, essentially. I tried this once before, but probably definitely not in the way that I'm going to do it now. And but I don't regret the 300 episodes that I've done, as I realize that all that time I was learning things and it got me to this point. I don't regret on the macro, the themes that we talked about and explored and the hard work that I put into each episode, 10 to 15 hours per episode of research and production and post production. I don't regret that because it developed me and it shaped me into who I am. And I hope that this coming season of however many episodes we end up getting through or doing, I'm not sure. I'm not even sure on the cadence yet of this show going forward. But after 2.5 years, the song, the pull, the desire to story and write and express these things have not left my heart. And it's like, I think it was Stephen King that says that it's terrible to have a notebook full of ideas of stories, because a notebook full of stories, your bad stories, is a place that they just continue to live on and you keep on going back to them. But it's good to almost not have a notebook full of all of your great story ideas, but you let them lie and simmer, and you see after time which themes and stories come back up and up and up and up and up and up and up again. And here I am finding myself that this is the one that continues to come up. So that's all for today. Stay tuned for the next episode of Weaver and Loom. I'm not even sure what number we're on today, but this is the intro to a new series. My name's Lucas, and I just want to thank you for being here with me on this journey, being here on the show for some of you over 7 years now, and some of you may be new and fresh. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on Weaver and Loom.